Bonjour. Bonjour, bonjour. I apologize, I'm not from France as mentioned, I'm from Afrique du Sud, as I think is the right term. And so I will deliver my presentation in English and hopefully my humor translates. It's a different kind of humor. Some of the folks who were in my sessions, I'm looking at you and some of the others, please don't throw things at me or insult me and all the rest. We'll see where we go from there. But this is really my presentation. My presentation is evolving to Homo Disruptis. Can we change individually in a world that's changing so quickly, right? So we've heard this morning about the impetus to change because of how generations are changing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a little bit more. So I'm going to go outside first to demonstrate how this world is changing, and then how should we change as individuals. So that's really my presentation that we're going to be speaking about. But before we do that, did anyone Google me? Anyone Google me? No? Now, mademoiselle, I apologize that I was not me without my shirt on. I will not be taking my shirt off. But we're in France as well, so monsieur as well, I'm not taking my shirt off for you, that is not me. That is my better-looking doppelganger. He's an Australian rugby player that plays for Japan. And he was injured in the World Cup game against South Africa. So that's not me, unfortunately. But that's me, and there's more information. But you're not here to listen about me. You're more here to understand the way the world is changing. So let's start. Let's start, and let me ask a simple question. There's 8 faces up here, 8 faces, and I realize they look very much of one demographic. If you can, and post the presentation, if you can give me examples of the other demographics, I'll be happy to change my presentation slides, but it must be of the same scale as these folks. But here's a question, let's start. There's 8 people over here, there's 8 faces. If you know at least one of these faces, please put your hand up and keep it up, and keep it up. So almost everyone has got their hands up. Now, do you know 2 people? If you don't know 2 people, put your hand down. If you do know 2 people, keep your hand up. Okay, so all these people with their hands up know at least 2 people. 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Anyone more than 6? 6 at the back. Do I hear 6? Going once. No, not even close. So no one knows more than 6. 6 of the 8 people. And this is very interesting because this demonstrates to me that these people that are changing the world are not people that we recognize. So who are they? There's the names over there. Let's see. Starting from the left, moving across, Elon Musk. We got him, Tesla. And it just so happens that he's a South African. So I'll take that box, right? Elon Musk, we probably recognize him. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got Zuckerberg, Facebook. We know about that gentleman, right? Next to him, Jeff Bezos is from Amazon. Okay, so we know that. So that one's okay. Now we get to the ones that are a little bit more difficult. Bottom left, Sergey Brin. Google. He is Larry Page's co-founder, and he's not as often seen in the public eye, but he's the other co-founder. Next to him is Jack Ma, Alibaba. Okay, and those are typically the ones that we get. Who are those other 3 gentlemen over there? Now, let's start at the top, next to Elon. Who's Travis Kalanick? Anyone? Started a small little company called Uber. Small little company with a valuation of about $60 billion, right? So that's them over there. Bottom, next to Jack Ma, Jack Dorsey. Twitter. And I'm going to guess that a millennial said that. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's Jack Dorsey who started Twitter. And next to him is Brian Chesky. Airbnb. And what I want to demonstrate through showing these 8 faces is these are the people that are changing the world of business, technology, almost every facet that we know, and yet we don't recognize them, which demonstrates how quickly this world is changing. Because if I showed you this slide 5 or 10 years ago, it would have been Gates, it would have been Jobs, it would have been Buffett, it would have been Branson. But the world is changing quicker and quicker and quicker, right? But let me ask a question, because it is aligned with this. What happens when you take a traditional sector like retail and you add some of this cool technology, you add in big data, artificial intelligence, mobile internet, so on and so forth, right? And then you throw in a bunch of celebrities as well. So you throw in the Beckhams and you throw in Taylor Swift and all the rest, right? So we take an old established brick and mortar industry and we add a whole bunch of technology. Well, you get this. It's called Singles Day. Who has heard of Singles Day? Singles Day, and I'm not gonna infer why. But for those of you who don't know, Singles Day is on 11th of November, so 1111, all the lonely numbers in the world, right? So it's all of us by ourselves. And it was started by Alibaba, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. And Alibaba said, you know, the 14th of February is Valentine's Day. That's when people that are in love and in couples buy each other presents. But in China, there's more single bachelor men than there are any other demographic. So the 11th of November, if you're a single guy, buy a present for yourself. Right? So it's maybe a little bit sad, but that's what happens, and that's the reality. And they use dates and all that kind of stuff. Here's the numbers. $17.8 billion in 24 hours. 175,000 orders a second, 120,000 payments every second, 82% of sales done on mobile phones, 1.7 million couriers to 4,000 different retailers around the world, 600 million packages, and one day in China is now bigger than all of Brazil's online sales. In 24 hours. That's what happens when you take technology and apply it to the retail sector. Now, those are very big numbers, but it's, whatever, we don't really understand what that means. So let me put it in context. The year before, on Singles Day, they made $14.3 billion. That was more than all of Facebook's revenue that year. In one day, Alibaba made more money than all of Facebook's revenue. They made almost 3 times the amount of Netflix's revenue. Okay? And if that doesn't show you how big this day was, it's 2.78% of Switzerland's GDP in 24 hours. That's what happens when you take technology and you apply it to an old school brick and mortar industry. And these are some of the businesses that you're in right now. Okay? So we spoke about those 8, but what about the people you don't see? Anybody has any idea who this person is, this young man? A young man called Jake Andrade. He's 15 years old, and he created a device to detect cancer by looking at markers that identify if you have cancer or not. 15 years old, it costs less than 3 US cents, takes 5 minutes to run, 168 times faster, 26,000 times less expensive, and 400 times more sensitive. Right? This is what the new competition looks like. In every single one of your businesses right now, this is what the competition looks like. And if you look into his background, he says things like, and bearing in mind he's 15, right? So when you were 15 years old, what were you doing? You were trying to work out how to do maths homework or English, or you were chasing the boys or the girls or whatever the case may be. This young man had created a new way to detect cancer. And it's these folks that are changing the world even more and more and more. But never mind that. Let's have a look at technology. So technology, without a doubt, is going to be with us from the start, right? And it allows everyone to have the same amount of information. So everyone has the same amount of access to information with ubiquitous connectivity. So we all have access to the internet, we all have smartphones. These things in our phones right now, these devices in our pockets, give us the ability to have the same amount of information as everyone else, right? And if that's the case, and we know that we have more young people growing up with technology, more and more and more and so more, why do we still traditionally ignore the high end of the octave? Why do we still say we are going to ignore young people under the age of 30 when without a doubt, as we heard this morning, they're going to be becoming more and more prevalent, more and more important? And in fact, they're going to be growing up with technology. And this is potentially what that world looks like. Come on, push, push. Okay, so this generation is born for the internet. It's a generation born for the internet, access to information, things that took some of us 50, 60 years to learn, maybe we'll never learn, is all accessible via our mobile phones. We cannot neglect them and say, well, you're too young, you don't understand, and we don't know any better. right? But let's talk about technology. So there's something called AlphaGo. Has anybody heard of the game, Go at least? Go is like Chinese chess, right? So in chess, there's 20 possible permutations for every single move. In Go, it's over 200. What that means is over the course of a game of Go, there's more potential moves in a game of Go than there are particles in the universe. And what that means is if you look at artificial intelligence, you can't program it to be brute force. What that means is you can't set a set of rules. If this, then that. If you do this, then do that, right? Rather, what they did with AlphaGo is they said, how do we create a machine that is able to play against versions of itself and other grandmasters and start to learn from that perspective? They then set this machine loose to play against the guy on that side, on the left-hand side, Lee Sedol, and he lost 5-0. Okay? So in this game that was created by humans that has more permutations than there are particles in the universe, the machine beat the human being. And it wasn't through brute force, but it was through the machine understanding and interpreting, saying, contextually, what is it that this human player could do, and how do I circumvent that, and how do I change things? So it's almost like the computer was starting to anticipate certain moves. Right? And it got even smarter. You now don't even need humans to teach machines. Machines can now teach other machines. Right? And so much so that they're now also sending messages to each other. So machines are now creating messages in a language that humans can't decode. So machines are teaching each other, and they're teaching each other in a language that hasn't been understood. Right? That's where the world is going. But what else is there? Blockchain. Some of you may have heard of blockchain. Who doesn't know what blockchain is? Who doesn't know? Okay. Blockchain is potentially the most important development in finance since the internet itself. And what it is at a very high level, it's an open source distributed ledger. And what that means is anyone that is part of a transaction can verify that transaction itself. So let me give you an example. And if I were to buy something from you, I were to buy a cell phone from you, and you would say, okay, that's going to cost me 100 euros. I will give you 100 euros, so I'll give you 10 euro notes. In that transaction, Anne can pick up the notes and look at it and go, yes, this is a legitimate note. It's not forged. It's not fake. It's an exchange of value, 100 euros, and there's verification of that note itself. Okay? Same thing if it was a credit card. If I went to Christine and said, I want to buy this phone, swipe the credit card, the bank would have a look at this and go, yes, Craig does own that credit card. It's his, it's verification, and he has money in his account. So it's proof of that. The blockchain allows people to authenticate the transaction within that transaction itself. What does that mean at a very high level? There's no need for banks. There's no need for banks. In fact, you can do transactions on the blockchain that are less than 0.5% of traditional business. So if you're in banking right now, perhaps you should be reconsidering certain elements of the business model. Right? And blockchain is all the way from any kind of interaction where there's a willing buyer, a willing seller. You can pay for university with bitcoins. As global currencies happen around Brexit, investors turn to blockchain. But even more so, right? Very recently, on March of this year, Bitcoin is more valuable than gold. So if that doesn't show you something interesting, I don't know what does. That's what's happening right now. But let's extend this analogy. We know about self-driving cars. Let me ask a question. What happens when your car has its own bank account? So we're entrepreneurial without a doubt. We're very smart people. And what we're going to do is we're going to buy a self-driving car. Okay? And we're here in Evian, and the car drops us both off here. And the car looks into our calendar and says, okay, Craig is going to be busy between the hours of 8 and 4. Okay, and therefore I'm unused. So what does the car do? It books itself in as an Uber driver, it drives around, it makes money, and it starts collecting money in its own bank account. And the car starts making me money. Because for most people around the world, the average utilization rate of a car is 4%. 4%, right? And as Elon Musk says, in 15 to 20 years, any cars that don't have full autonomy will have negative value. It will be like owning a horse. You will only be owning one for sentimental reasons. Right? So this world is moving so quickly. But what happens when you live to be 150? Right? So already now we can print organs, and we've got medicine, and we have access to personalized health. And you can hack to be over 120. This morning, tomorrow said 100 years old. We're all going to be living to 100 years old. Right? I say 100 years old, that's when you're young. You're still a teenager. Right? 120. And there's a technique called CRISPR. What CRISPR is, it allows doctors to go in, analyze DNA of living tissue, cut it out, and replace it with other living DNA. And so if you have cancer, it's not just a question of removing the tumor, it's a question of saying, how do I fundamentally remove that faulty DNA? So how do we change that? All right? And in fact, in 2011, the Time cover magazine said 2045 was going to be the year when we become immortal, where we become like machines, a singularity was going to exist. This guy comes along, Ray Kurzweil, who's Google's chief futurist, and he goes, it's not going to be 2045, it's going to be 2029. So in 12 years' time, we potentially may start seeing the signs where we will live forever. This is the world that we're in that's changing so quickly. And suddenly we see the imperative and the requirements for us to change as individuals. Right? And over here in December, panel approved, you could do some gene editing, you could even now sequence DNA on your smartphone, and so on and so forth. And this comes me to the next part. If you cannot put value on life experience, why are we still ignoring the low end of the octave? Right? So it's both ends. Technology has made the relevancy of this conference, of this program, so much more so that we can't neglect either end of the spectrum. So let's talk about business very quickly. Do you want to hear about Uber or do you want to hear about Airbnb? But we can't do both, Airbnb or Uber. Airbnb, we're going to talk about Airbnb. So I've spoke about technology, let's talk about business a little bit and how this changes, and then we're going to show you why you have to change. So what happens with Airbnb is that the business becomes digitized. So everything that's part of that business becomes ones and zeros, becomes data. It becomes a binary sequence of information. That's the first thing that happens, right? So Airbnb is the same thing. No longer is there physical manifestation in terms of marketing, in terms of material. It all becomes ones and zeros. It becomes digitized. The next thing is very deceptive. So hotels, and perhaps some of you maybe say, first of all, does everybody know what Airbnb is? Who doesn't know what Airbnb is? So we're okay. So we all know this. Okay, that's great. That's spectacular. So it's very deceptive, right? So some of us are still not convinced. Some of us are saying, why would you want to go and stay at a stranger's house? It's disgusting. I'm on holiday. You don't know what's happened at that house, you know what's going on in the bedroom or the living room or whatever. It's a terrible thing to do. It's very deceptive. Some of you also saying, well, why would I want to rent out the spare room in my house? You don't know who's going to stay with me. It could be Boris Johnson. I'd hate that to happen. Right? So it's a question of, well, maybe this doesn't make sense. But then it becomes very disruptive. And if you own the Sheraton Hotel or the Radisson Blu, suddenly you start seeing your numbers drop, and you start asking why. Money then gets taken out of the transaction. It becomes demonetized. No longer do you have to pay for it. It's part of that transaction. It's part of the ones and zeros that happened before. So it's not about cash up front or cash at the end. It's seamlessly part of the transaction. Money gets taken out of it. The hotel essentially then dematerializes. The hotel's not there anymore, because if you use Airbnb, you don't necessarily care about the hotel. You care about the bed and you care about the shower. So I don't need a check-in desk. I don't need a concierge. I don't need the fancy hotel. It essentially dematerializes. And the last thing is it becomes democratized. So now anyone can now rent out the spare room, and anyone can rent out a spare room. These are the 6 Ds of disruptive business, and it shows how businesses are changing. This is called exponential business or platform businesses. Right? And a lot of us, in my interactions with some of you, have expressed to me, this is how your businesses are being disrupted right now. If you don't believe me in terms of how important this is a picture of Paris. Right? The blue dots are where you can stay in hotels. The red dots are where you can stay at Airbnb. Now, if you're suddenly a hotel, you're very concerned. In fact, Brian Chesky, that we've met before, and he said this in 2014, so 3 years ago, Marriott wants to add 30,000 rooms this year. We will add that in the next 2 weeks. Okay, so it's interesting. So again, we're talking about how things are changing. And I won't go too much into this. We know that the world is changing from a political point of view. Brexit's, Article 50, it should have been, they said it was going to be passed. It's now going to be passed on the 29th, apparently. I don't know. Watch this space. And this has probably captured the best through a Reddit thread. Right? These are some of the best things that I could see in terms of as the European countries pull out. I won't read them, but we can see what's potentially going to be happening over here. So what's next? What's next? The world is changing very quickly. The earth is changing below our feet. And how much different would the world have been, gentlemen, if it was run by women? How much different would the world be if it was run by women who are progressive, that have a mindset around collectiveness, around togetherness? Instead, we don't have the dear lady on the left. We've got this. Okay? And in many respects, the challenge is the rules are changing. Can these leaders change, and can they bring with us? Thankfully, at least the European Donald Trump was beaten. Right? So at least we can say that. Right? So that's one good thing. So that sets the context of my actual presentation as we go into this, because the truth is, as Leon Tolstoy says, everyone thinks about changing the world, but no one thinks about changing themselves. And so I've given you a context to say, here's the burning platform, here's the imperative and the necessity for us to change as people. Now let's understand what are some of these things we should change. So I'm going to look at 4 things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is rewiring your brain. So how do you fundamentally think about the world differently? How do you rewire your brain? The second thing is, how do you redirect your heart? How do you find the passion? How do you find your why? The third thing is redirect your hands. Change the way you work. Can you be lean? Can you do things entrepreneurially? The last one is, can you refocus your voice to connect with other people in a way that's meaningful, that's not superficial? And so that's the framework that we're going to cover in about 25 minutes, I'm going to take a guess. Right? So in 25 minutes, that's what we're going to do. We all okay with that? Yes? Anybody wants to leave to go have coffee, to go climb a mountain, to go swim? Okay. So let's start. Rewiring the brain. And you'll see each one has little square brackets. That's the first lesson. The first lesson for rewiring your brain is, as Alvin Toffler says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because the rules have changed, as you saw through the world that I showed before, for those 10 or 15 slides. The world is fundamentally changing. If you're in banking, blockchain will disrupt you. If you're in hotels, Airbnb is going to disrupt you, right? AI, so on and so forth. And the way you can survive this is by saying, how do I unlearn certain things? Because in as much as you're successful from the different companies that you're from, that in many respects may be the reason why you will not be successful. Right? If you don't understand what this means, let's watch a video in terms of how hard it is to unlearn something.
He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
So the faster I go, the better. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences, and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this.
Can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up?
I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I proved is that I could only redesignate that bias.
But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned.
So I learned 3 things from this experiment. I learned that welders are often smarter than engineers. I learned that knowledge does not equal understanding. And I learned that truth is truth, no matter what I think about it. So be very careful how you interpret things, because you're looking at the world with a bias, whether you think you are or not.
Okay, so knowledge does not equal understanding. Knowledge does not equal understanding. One of the attendees to one of my previous workshops said exactly that. They said, I've been to so many workshops where I know I must change and I know I must work together, but I find myself doing the same thing time and time and time again. I know that I should, but I don't. Knowledge does not equal understanding, and that's the first challenge, is can you unlearn certain behaviors? Can you challenge yourself? The second lesson comes from India. Now, this is a spitting cobra. Spitting cobra and number plates. Anybody have any idea what these have in common? No idea, right? I'd be amazed if you had an answer. So the first one is a spitting cobra. During the colonial days, the British government had colonized India, and there was a problem with spitting cobras. They had too many spitting cobras, but they came up with an ingenious plan. The ingenious plan was, what we will do is we will pay for every single snake skin that people come and give us. Therefore, they will kill cobras. Makes sense, right? Makes complete sense. However, what actually happened was this. Very entrepreneurial Indian folks, very sneaky Indian people, started breeding snakes. They started breeding snakes, killing them, bringing them to the government, and started making money. When the government caught on, they were like, sneaky Indians. And what did they do? They stopped the program. So what do you think all those Indian folks did with those snakes? They let them go. And so there was more snakes than there were before. because that's called a second order consequence, a second order effect. It's an unintended consequence. It's something that happens post the fact. We thought that we were going to get rid of snakes, but the second order was we were encouraging people to breed snakes. It's a second order effect. It's what happens even though we don't think. The second example also comes from India. Now, if you look at those two number plates, you'll see the top one ends in a 7. It ends in an odd number, whereas the bottom one ends in an even number. India has a lot of pollution, and again, they were very smart, and now it's on the Indian folks. And the Indian folks said, I know what we're going to do. Okay, let me not do that, right? But they said, what we're going to do is if you drive an odd-numbered number plate, you can only drive your car on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have an even number plate, you can drive on a Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, because it makes sense. Obviously, no one's going to be then driving the cars. They'll take public transport. Pollution will go down, and so on and so forth. What do you think happened? They bought another car. So if you have a car that has an odd number, you will then buy a car that has an even number. But cars are expensive. So what kind of car do you buy? A cheap car that makes a lot of pollution. And so what they did is they created more pollution, more cars, and compounded it. Right? So the second lesson is consider the second order effects. Consider what happens after the decision that you make. Right? Whatever you believe the solution should be, what are the unintended consequences? What are the second order effects thereafter? Peter Drucker says, the problems of today are caused by the solutions of yesterday. Exceptionally powerful. So that's the second one. Now this is a controversial picture. It's an exceptionally controversial picture. It's a picture of Auschwitz. What is your reaction? Some of you are sad. Some of you are disgusted. Some of you are horrified. Some of you may actually say, well, you know what, I see hope. Because through the hardship that some of these folks endured, there was the ability that we could regroup. Some of you say, we see change. Because Germany is not like this. Indeed, Europe is not like this anymore. So you've got an extreme range of emotions. Right? Here's a second picture. It's a picture of the future. What is your reaction to this? Looks interesting. I don't know if we have the technology to have flying cars. It looks very clean. Oh, he's got a robot dog over there. I don't know if that's feasible. It looks okay. The problem is both of those reactions are fundamentally backwards to what they should be. Because in order to survive and change this world that we're in, we need to be rational about the past and emotional about the future. It's not about being emotional about the past and rational about the future. We must be excited about the future. We must embrace it with all the vigor and energy that we can, and we must be rational about the past. Inasmuch as we hope that we can change the past, we cannot change the past, but we can learn from it. So can we be rational about the past, and can we be emotional about the future? Can we be in a place where I'm excited to see this, where this fills me with inspiration and hope? Okay? Here's another question. It's a research done by Ipsos, right? And this gauges the question of saying, well, to what extent do you feel that your generation will have a better or worse life than your parents? And I've highlighted France and Germany. And I guess what that means is French people are very pessimistic, right? Because at least on this end of the spectrum, only 25% of those polled said they believe they will have a better life now than their parents, right? 20% were ambivalent, 55% said it's going to be worse. On the other side, we've got Germany, 38, 31, 31, right? So even just the general narrative says that the belief is that we have got things that are about the same or worse than what it used to be. I would hate to do this right now in a post-Brexit European populist world, and even in the US, right? But the truth is, we need to challenge these assumptions. And we need to cultivate an abundance mindset. We need to say, let's look at the data. Never before in the history of mankind have we had more literacy, have we had greater nutrition, have we had more access to countries with a free and open democracy than we've had before. It's not about the world being worse. It's about us not understanding that the world is better. But we need to cultivate a world, we need to cultivate a thinking that there's abundance, there's more than enough. For those of you that came through my sessions, it's the world with. It's not the zero-sum game world. Right? It's the world with a lot of stuff, and we can all win together. It's not I win, you lose. So let's have a look at the heart very quickly. So we looked at the mind. The first question is, what is your why? What is your personal why? Not what's your company why. What is your personal why? Why do you do the things that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? Why Do you teach your kids in a certain way? Why do you behave in certain ways, right? What's your personal why? And then saying, do these things align with what I'm doing in my entire life? So does it align with my work, with my play, with the friends, the circles that I have? What's your personal why, and can you align these? Because often in times we are doing things just for the sake of doing them. And if we were to think about our future in 20 years' time and where we're going right now, I don't think many of us would end up being where we wanted to go because we've lost sight of our personal why. Right? So we need to question that. We need to question, find, align, and challenge your why on a daily basis. Let your personal why guide your decision-making process. And bearing in mind that there's often going to be times where it's going to be very, very, very difficult. There's times where we will lose sight of why we're doing certain things, like this.
English for beginners. I am, you are, he, she, it is. I am, you are, he, she, it is. Robert, I am. Hi. Can you show me the way to the beach? Towel, breakfast, fork, knife, bread. I love you. You are perfect.
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
I'm gonna fucking kill you. I love you. You are perfect.
I thank you.
Suitcase, slippers, toothbrush, passport, pajamas.
Be good, dog.
Hi, I am. Hi, I am.
Passengers on flight Aerolíneas Argentina.
Hi. I am your grandpa.
Okay. So through the course of finding our why, there's times where we'll stumble, where we don't know, and it's very important to keep sight of why we're doing certain things. Well, what does that mean? Well, one of those is understanding your values. Now, I'm going to do something very scary for some of us. I'm going to ask you to imagine your funeral. For some of us, and I'm not going to look at anyone, for some of us it's 10 years away, for some of us it's 50 years away. Right? But think about your funeral and think about the eulogy. Think about the words that someone would say about you. And it's very sad, right? But it's not just what they would say about you, it's what values would they say you lived to. What are the values that you lived? What are the things? And can you live them through the people around you? Because if you look at the top left-hand side, you'll see a very young man that seems to be having a hell of a good time speaking on his cell phone. So inasmuch as we may know our why and we may know our values, are we living our values through others around us? And can they speak and carry on the values that we deem appropriate? Right? If we don't know our values, if we don't know our why, anything in this changing world will change us to their means. And we have to be certain that we know and we can embrace and live our values on a daily basis. Right? So let those two things guide you, your why and your values. Now here's a very fun one. What color is the dress? Blue, blue, black. Anyone else see a different color? No one sees white gold? Does anyone see white gold? White gold people? What are they talking about? Blue, black. There's something wrong with their eyes, right? How do they see white and gold? What's going on over here? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? This is a picture that literally broke the internet. It broke the internet because it was posted by a user, and this entire Twitter storm broke out, and people were fighting, and families were having arguments at dinner tables. It's black, blue, it's white, gold, what is going on? Well, as it turns out, science says, and I'm not convinced by this, but science says what is actually happening is you're looking at this thing over here, and subconsciously your brain is seeing a color, and then it acts on that within that split second, because it determines this is what the color is, and therefore that's the color that you see. So if you see white gold, that's what your brain tells you that you're seeing, because it's obvious, white and gold. But for some of us, it's obvious, it's black and blue. But we're missing the point. And this is so much more relevant in an increasingly fractured world that we're in. It's not about the color of the dress. It's the fact that it's a dress. But we are so hung up on the color of the dress that it divides families, it divides countries, and it's going to fracture the way we do things. Right? So that's a very powerful lesson. But here's another one. There's a parable of blind men feeling an elephant, and there's a number of different men, and one feels the trunk, and it feels the trunk, and it goes, this must be an anaconda, it must be a huge snake, because it's long and it's powerful and it's massive, it must be. And another man feels its legs, and it goes, it's thick and it's broad and it's stout. This is a tree trunk, without a doubt this is a tree trunk. And another one feels the tail, and it goes, this is a rope, what are you guys talking about? Obviously it's a rope, because I can feel little hairs and I can feel that. And another one feels the tusk, and it goes, this is a spear because it's smooth and it's pointy. Every single one of those blind men are right from their point of view. But every single one of those blind men are wrong together. Right? Sorry, they're right together. And this is another key point in this world that we're in. Accept the differences in opinion to find the truths. In a world that we're in right now that changes so quickly, there's often more than one truth. The question is, what are the truths, and can we understand, and can we accept the fact that I may be wrong, you may be wrong, but we may all be right? Or even more so, I may be right, you may be right, but we're all wrong. Right? This is the paradoxical world that we're in right now. So that's the third rule. Let's have a look at hands very quickly. Hands very quickly. So we've spoken about rewiring your brain. We've spoken about reigniting your heart. Let's think about the world that we're in, that we need to change the way we work. So here's a tweet that went out, right, by this guy, Loic Lemire. And on the 11th of December, he said, the San Mateo supercharger is always full with idiots who leave their Tesla for hours even if it already changed. Elon Musk, the man that runs billion-dollar companies, tweeted back, you're right, this is becoming an issue. Supercharger spots are meant for charging, not parking. We will take action. Again, this is a man that runs billion-dollar companies. He wants to put people on Mars, for crying out loud. But he finds time to tweet back, right? Not just that, in this world, you must be lean, you must be entrepreneurial. Because what did he do? Well, Tesla acted in 6 days. And over the Christmas period, they changed things. Now, if Tesla can do that in 6 days, why can we not do it? Why can we not be entrepreneurial? Why can we not be lean? Right? The second one is an interesting one. And we spoke about a little bit about this morning with Tamara in terms of profiles. This is called a T-shaped individual. A T-shaped individual is someone, so if you look at the top of the T, who knows a lot of stuff, but is very good at one thing. This is myself, right? So I studied engineering, and then I did a master's in user interfaces. I then went off business, and I started 4 companies. I then went to digital advertising at Google, and I was head of small business marketing. Then I went back to business, and I'm doing stuff around corporate culture and futurism. Right? This is the profile of an individual that keeps on changing as the world changes, because the truth is, the new normal is 4 job changes by the time you're 32. That's the new normal. In fact, as the Minister of Education in Argentina says, a child today can expect to change jobs at least 7 times over the course of their lives, and 5 of those jobs don't yet exist. So for you to be relevant in a changing world, you need to continually reinvent yourself, continuously change yourself over time. Right? And that's a vital, vital point. So that's the way you work. And as we spoke about this before, and some of those have seen this in my slides, right? In this world that we're in, we need to move beyond a you win, I lose situation to you lose and I win, which is symptomatic of zero-sum game thinking. We need to move away from a world that says there's not enough. We need to move to a world that says, well, there's more. But if it's not zero-sum game thinking, what is there? Well, it's win-win. But it's not. Because in a win-win world, it's a lose-lose world. Assuming we could get closer to the mark, no one really wins. If you try this, go to dinner with your wife or your husband or your significant other. One wants to go for salmon, one wants to go for steak. And what do you settle on? You settle on pasta. Right? So both of us give up what we want, and none of us get what we want. Right? So what do we move to? Well, we need to move beyond win-win to win-with. How do we cross the opposite side of the table to sit next to you, to sit with my competitor, and how do I win with you? How do I understand in this world I can win with you? Right? And this is so much more emphasized in Cleveland, where they've had tremendous problems.
Here we go, bring it on in. It's time now. It's our city. We got to do it for them, dog. We got to do it for Cleveland. They're waiting on us. What we do tonight is going to define what we're about. Let's get it going.
Every single night, every single practice, every single game, we got to give it all we got. Because they're going to ride with us. Everything that we do on this floor was because of this city. We owe them. We're going to grind for this city. They're going to support us, man, but we got to give it all back to them. We get it done. The toughness that we have on the court is going to come from this city. Everybody, the whole city of Cleveland, that's what it's all about. It's time to bring them something special. Let's go. Bring it on in, everybody. Let's go. Let's go. Hard work on 3. Together on 6. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. Hard work on 3. Together on 6. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. Here we go, man. Hard work on 3. Together on 6. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. Here we go, right here. Let's get it. It's all us. Cleveland on 3. 1, 2, 3.
So if there's one message I could leave as I go back to Africa eventually, for a Europe that's undergoing significant change, is that message. Is we can only succeed together. It's vitally, vitally important. So please keep that in mind. Right? And it's such a changed world that even China is portrayed as a global leader of change versus Trump. So let's have a look at this last point very quickly, and then I'll be done. Right? So we've touched on the brain, we've touched on the heart, we've touched on hands, and now we're going to touch on the voice and how do you reconnect with other people. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to look to lessons of US presidents. So the 42nd president was this chap. Probably the most infamous for what? I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Right? Though it is his thing, and he will never be forgotten for that. But what did happen was he admitted his failings eventually, but he admitted his failings. And not just the US, the world accepted him because we saw him as he was, as a flawed person, cracks, flaws, scars, everything and all. And we contrast him with this gentleman over here, right? Who is not transparent, who is not open. In fact, in 2 terms, Barack Obama had fewer scandals than Donald Trump had in the last 2 weeks. And that was the beginning of his term. That was taken on the 13th of January, so it's now 2 months later. To connect with people in this world, to connect with others, it's a question of saying, how can I be naked and authentic? And when I say naked, I don't mean Bill Clinton naked, right? I mean, how can you be authentic? How can you be genuine? How can you be vulnerable? How can you be vulnerable in the center with everyone around you, where they can see you for who you are, with your warts and all, with all the problems? Can you be authentic? Some of you have seen this picture. It's a router and a firewall. So on the left-hand side, it's a router. It's a piece of technical hardware that says how do we take information, how do we look at information, and how do we determine where it goes. Versus on the right-hand side, we have a firewall, and the role of a firewall is to block It's to block, 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 block. And the question for you as leaders, as individuals, as someone that's leading teams intergenerationally, intercontinentally, all over the place, is are you a router or are you a firewall? Are you the kind of leader that says, I will send information to those around me as quickly as possible? Or do you say, I'm a firewall and I will block things. I will hold on to everything that I have. And my challenge to you is choose to be a router. Don't be a firewall. Right? And even more so, it's a question of building bridges, not building walls. So what are you doing with your daily brick? Are you building bridges or building up walls? Right? So think about that. We're almost there. In this world that we're in right now, you want to go back, take a picture? There we go, there we go. Anyone else want to take a picture? There we go. It's all about customer satisfaction. Okay, so a few more lessons. In this world, to connect with everyone else, know the world. Know people out there, know what's going on, know what people see, know what's happening, but then also know yourself, know your magic, know your personal magic, know that thing that you have that from the time you were so high, people were saying, there's this thing about you that makes you special. That's your magic. There's something about every single one of us, and it aligns with our values, it aligns with our why, it's the fabric, it's our essence of being. Find your magic, find the world, and simply connect the two. Find your magic, find the world, and connect the two, like this lady did, right? Because as Oscar Wilde says, be yourself, everyone else is taken. So here's a video of someone that knows her magic, that shared that with everyone.
Hey, I'm really excited to share with you something I got. Stuff didn't fit. Surprisingly, it was a little too big. Thank you. I know some of you may be thinking the opposite. Shame. No shame. It's all love. It's all love. This is mine. Like, when it's said and done, at the end of the day, this is mine that I bought. And I'm going to keep it for my own. You can see it kind of has Star Wars. Oh, you're getting a little hint. Okay. So you want to see what I got? It's so great. I can't wait to show you. Okay. So here it is. Hold on. It may be a little tight. It may be tight on me. I gotta undo it just a little bit. Hold on. Stay patient, people. Stay patient. This is gonna be worth it. I promise. And I had to share with my friends on the internet webs. So here's what I'm having trouble getting it. Okay, I gotta take off my glasses for it. Oh, naturally. Okay, here we go. So, yes. Now watch when my mouth actually moves. That's not me making that noise, it's the mask! Here, listen.
So this is an example of a woman that knows what she brings. Her magic is joy. It's plain and simple, it's joy. And she's found that magic and she's become almost a celebrity and a spokesperson for happiness. Right? So in closing, I've given you a lot of information. In closing, I'm going to give you these 4 things to remember. Is in this world that we're in, as individuals to be relevant, challenge more, reflect more, experiment more, and share more. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for letting me be with you.